Hi there, Matt Wade here, and today I thought I'd take a bit of an administrator-centric detour to talk a little bit about Microsoft and Office 365 Service Level Agreements, SLAs, and what happens when Microsoft doesn't meet them, and how to get a refund. So let's jump in. A couple weeks ago, I saw a nice reminder on Reddit that when a Microsoft 365 service goes down long enough, customers are entitled to a credit back on what they paid for that or other affected services. I had totally forgotten about this. My tenant is only a few users, so it's not like the credit is huge to my budget or anything, but I thought it would be a good topic to go through for a video. Even more useful would be a case study running through what actually happens when you request that refund. So this video covers a bit about what you pay for, what refunds you're entitled to, and what happens when you request that service credit. Huge disclaimer though, I am not a lawyer and I'm not an SLA expert, but I am a customer who wants what he pays for. For your specific situation, you'll always want to dive deep into the SLA and perhaps even get your legal counsel involved so you're ready with arguments or backup when you request credits, especially if those credits are large. Most of Microsoft's online services come with a service level agreement, and most of them are set at the 3.9 level. You might also see references for 4.9 and 5.9. Though those are almost always advertisements of actual performance, not guaranteed performance. Overall, Microsoft 365, Office 365, and Azure perform very well. But like all man-made systems, sometimes something happens and, well, they go down. If they're down long enough, you as a customer are guaranteed a refund or credit. There are probably dozens of various SLAs within the M365 ecosystem, whether it's Azure Active Directory, Exchange Online, Teams call quality, and various Power Platform ones, and more. What I'm saying is before you put in a credit request, be sure you understand the SLA of the specific service you're talking about. Generally, the credit is 25% back for less than 99.9% uptime, 50% back for less than 99%, and 100% back for less than 95%. Two things about this. First, being up at least 95% of the time, let alone 99.9% of the time, is actually really good. I've worked at places with on-prem systems that would go down here and there, and they rarely made those numbers. I'm not trying to generalize or make a trend out of a single data point, but frankly, I find it pretty impressive. Second, getting back so much for not meeting the SLA is a pretty good deal. What you get back is a credit toward what you paid for the service to begin with. So, Teams calling performs at 99.5% and, making numbers up here, let's say you pay $4 per user per month, you'd get $1 back per user, 25%. That's pretty good. However, you'll never get more than what you pay Microsoft for the service, even if what you build affects a much larger revenue loss, or maybe that lost call also lost you a six-figure customer. This isn't insurance, it's simply a reimbursement for what you've already paid for. Now, the math for this is generally set up as this. It's unnecessarily confusing, and user minutes is not defined anywhere I've seen on Microsoft's website, but what this all means is basically this. Number of users times the percent of the time of the month the service was down. You can use minutes, hours, days, whatever unit you'd like, as long as you're consistent with your dimensional analysis. During a service outage, you'll find a reference to the service in question in the M365 Admin Center under Health, Service Health, Incidents. Now, of course, if the admin center is affected, you won't be able to see anything, which is why I generally like to follow the MSFT365 status Twitter handle. I've got a full video on how to get push notifications when M365 service goes down. Just click up here. The important piece of information you need here is the incident ID. What you'll find in the Service Health Center is a listing of ongoing incidents. By the time you're looking for a credit, that incident is history, which is why you want to click the History tab. Here you can search the incident ID, and included is a history of updates on the incident, and following the incident, a downloadable report on the entirety of the incident. These reports can be kind of interesting to read if you're into the tech. So I decided to see for myself how this process all works. This is a case study of a small tenant, 4 licensed Office 365 users, and a Europe-based tenant with 3 users based in the United States. If you've been paying attention, I'm sure you well remember the Azure Active Directory outage on September 28th, 2020. Since AAD was down, effectively all Microsoft services were down. It was incident ID MO222965, so we're working under the AAD SLA. Jumping to the incidents listing in the Service Health Center, you'll see they list information about the outage, including that it lasted 5 hours. You can view all the message updates by clicking View History next to Latest Message. In this case, I went through the M365 Admin Center to request my credit, even though this was technically an Azure issue. I figure it's Microsoft's issue to figure out who to route the ticket to, given the huge impact of this outage. In the Admin Center, you've got to click the little teal question mark box in the bottom right to open any ticket. From here, of course, you can't just open a ticket. You have to provide a summary of your issues so they can hopefully provide you some self-help information before you use up their time. Guess what is never an option for self-help? Refunds. So here I tried SLA uptime refund, no luck, but it does give the option to open a ticket. The subject line is populated with my search term, and I can take the opportunity to provide some more detail in the box below it. Feel free to take my wording if you'd like. Due to the September 28th AAD outage, ID MO222965, our users were unable to access most of the Microsoft 365 services during the outage. This outage is a violation of the 99.9% uptime SLA. I'd like to request a 25% credit for our September bill. Please let me know if you have any questions. Note that you have until the end of the next month to submit a credit request. So for this outage, the cutoff date is actually October 31st, 2020. Provide your contact info and press submit. Now starts the waiting game. I submitted my request at 9:13 a.m. local time on a Friday. Got my first response at 9:31 a.m. local time saying that they were looking into it. The back and forth was friendly and professional over the course of a couple days. The person I worked with listed their work hours in their signature, so I had an idea of when I would get responses, though their hours were less than a full 8-hour day. So our discussion likely went longer than it would have if their hours were 8 hours per day and more aligned with my time zone. All in all, I will say there was a lot of pushback on the credits. It took until the next Thursday, 6 days, to settle the issue. Basically, what I was told in their first response was that the issue didn't affect my tenant and the incident was not listed in my Service Health Center. But that wasn't true. I showed you the message. And I can tell you with certainty that I was unable to access Outlook, Teams, and even Word and Excel due to the authentication issues. After pushing back, they offered me a 25% credit on one E5 license as a good faith gesture since they couldn't confirm that I was affected. In response, I provided a screenshot of the Service Health Center to prove the incident existed in my tenant. In response to the screenshot, they gave in and acknowledged the outage affected my tenant. But they stated that the downtime was announced and therefore didn't count against the SLA, stating, "I would like you to note that the service incident was announced when it occurred. It did not occur without there being a notification on that. The SLA uptime is 99.9%. The incident can be counted as a 0.01% downtime from Microsoft." They provided no math justifying where the 0.01% comes from, nor any justification on the meaning of the fact that it was announced. I'm not even sure what that means. It's probably referencing some loophole in the SLA where an announced outage doesn't count against the SLA, but I don't know the details. And hell, it's not my job to. If they're going to deny me, they need to justify it and provide the source for that information. That's what they're paid for. So ignoring any concept of a loophole, I responded seeking to understand why the math wasn't in my favor. Looking at the math of this situation, AAD was acknowledged to be down for 5 hours. I will note that we were impacted well before they acknowledged the outage started, probably 2 or 3 hours. But that doesn't really matter here because it wouldn't change the outcome of the SLA uptime calculations. So that's 5 hours out of 720 hours in September per user, which is 99.31% uptime, definitely below the 99.9% SLA. I provided this math and asked for an explanation as to why this wasn't the situation for my tenant. Ultimately, the Microsoft rep responded that my calculations were correct and they provided a listing of the amount I would receive as a credit for our 4 accounts. Ultimately, we're getting the service credit that I'm under the impression that we deserve. So my takeaway here is don't accept an initial denial of service credits. Push back if you think you're right, and if you're not sure, don't give up. Place the burden on them to justify why you're not entitled to the credit. They're a $1 trillion company and can afford it. Seriously though. Now, I'm not a lawyer, I don't write SLAs, and I didn't read all of them. My example is a very small tenant, minimal income for them, so there's a chance that the Microsoft rep was right and just gave up because I'm a stubborn pain in the ass, and it just wouldn't be worth their effort. Wouldn't be the first time, I'll admit. But to my credit, the math seems pretty clear, and they responded that I was correct once I sent them the details, which is now a precedent for a future complaint. Maybe not a legal precedent, but definitely a thorn in your side precedent nonetheless. You told me I was right, so I'm going to refer to that later on. I can be really annoying when I think I'm owed something, by the way. Anyway, that's how you submit an SLA credit request and how you do the math to confirm that you're entitled to it. The larger the organization, the bigger the impact of the service credit. Your mileage, of course, may vary, and you shouldn't base your expectations on my experience, but I thought it might be useful to see how the process worked through a real example. Now, are you an M365 admin rolling out or supporting Microsoft Teams and are totally overwhelmed with the everyday support and how do I questions? Well, I've got the best thing for you. My upcoming book is the essential field guide every Teams user needs. Pre-order now using the link below for your colleagues so they'll leave you alone to get your job done. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you found this useful. Please leave any comments or questions below. I'm curious to hear your stories and how you've dealt with getting service credits back due to an SLA breach, and if you notice any issues or errors in my situation. I just reported as it went, not necessarily how it's supposed to go. As always, a like and subscribe is much appreciated. Happy working the system to get the refund you deserve after all the anxiety that ensues with an M365 service outage.